In this video, we will talk about top 10 American serial killers. But before we start, be sure to smash that subscribe button and don't forget to click the bell icon to get a notification when we update videos like this one. Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy is well known for his crimes, having been the subject of multiple films and documentaries. Bundy, who has been described as smart and attractive, used his good looks to attract his victims, sexually abusing and murdering at least 36 women between 1974 and 1978 in Washington, Oregon, Colorado, Utah, and Florida. Some believe he is responsible for hundreds of murders. Bundy was eventually sentenced to death for the killing of 2 college students in 1979, as well as the rape and murder of a 12-year-old girl. In 1989, he was killed by an electric chair in Florida. John Wayne Gacy. In the 1970s, John Wayne Gacy was responsible for the killings of at least 33 boys and young men in Chicago. But he has also been utilized as a media personality because his role as a party joker at children's parties and social functions. Gacy was arrested for sexual assault lots of times in the 1960s, the first time by a teenage lad. Gacy was able to acquire a property in a Chicago suburb after being freed on parole in the early 70s, from which neighbors reportedly reported a foul odor coming. When 15-year-old Robert Piest went missing in 1978, authorities found that Gacy was the last person to see him. Further research showed the bodies of 29 teenagers and young men in or near Gacy's residence, as well as 4 more along the Des Plaines River. He argued insanity, but the jury disregarded the clinical test and declared Gacy guilty of all 33 killings. In 1994, he was killed by lethal injection. Mr. Jeffrey Dahmer. Between 1978 and 1991, Jeffrey Dahmer, also known as the Milwaukee Cannibal, was a famous serial murderer and sex offender who murdered and mutilated 17 teens and young men. Dahmer was arrested in 1991 after police discovered a guy called Tracy Edwards running down the street in handcuffs, having nearly escaped Dahmer's grip. Later, police searched Dahmer's residence, discovering picture albums of dismembered victims, human heads in the refrigerator and freezer, multiple skulls, and a 57-gallon barrel filled with acid and rotten carcasses. Police also discovered indications that Dahmer had ingested several of his victims. He admitted to killing 17 of them and was sentenced to 15 life sentences, but Dahmer was murdered in jail in 1994 by another inmate. Samuel Little. Serial murderer Samuel Little was regarded as one of America's most prolific serial murderers. Little admitted to killing 93 people in 19 states between 1970 and 2005 after going unnoticed for decades. According to the FBI, law enforcement was able to corroborate 50 of his admissions in 2019. The majority of his victims were disadvantaged, young black women. Little was arrested at a homeless shelter in Louisville, Kentucky in 2012 on a drugs charge and extradited to California, where he was convicted of killing 3 women in the late 1980s after DNA evidence obtained at the crime locations linked him to his crimes. In all 3 incidents, the women had been battered and then strangled, and their bodies had been discarded in an alley, a trash, and a garage. The FBI claimed at the time in a report. He died in 2020 at the age of 80 while serving life sentence in a state jail in Los Angeles County. The Ripper Crew. In the late 1980s, 4 Chicago area men acquired the terrifying nickname, the Ripper Crew. Investigators suspect the 4 men, Thomas Kokorales, Andrew Kokorales, Robin Jett, and Edward Sprazier, created a satanic gang that murdered up to 20 women. They drove about in a red van hunting for ladies on the streets to kidnap. All 4 were convicted for at least a portion of the attacks, whether for murder, attempted murder, kidnapping, or rape. The Ripper Crew targeted women of different ages and races. In 2019, Thomas Kokorales got freed from jail. His brother Andrew was hanged in 1999, while the 2 other guys are still imprisoned. H. Holmes. H. Holmes, the pharmacist who transformed a hotel into a torture castle, was one of the Chicago's most infamous serial murderers. Before 1893 and its World Fair, Holmes went to Chicago and began building a 3-story hotel with a variety of nefarious devices, including as gas lines, secret tunnels, and trapdoors, halls to dead ends, chutes to the floor, soundproof padding, and torture devices spread around a maze. The gas enabled Holmes to knock out his guests before the worst of what was to come, which was frequently on his surgical tables. He then burned the victims in the furnace of the building, selling skeletons to medical institutions and committing life insurance fraud. He confessed to more than 30 murders before being hung in 1896, only when a fellow scammer handed him up for failing to meet a financial commitment. Berkowitz. Moving forward in time, we come to the woman known as Lady Bluebeard. In 1881, she came to the United States from Norway and settled in Chicago. She married a man while there, but then murdered him. Because no proof was discovered, she went free while also collecting insurance policy money that enabled her to acquire a farm in Indiana. She remarried there but also murdered her second husband. Again, the authorities discovered no evidence. She then began putting newspaper advertising in search of a husband. Several guys came to her land, but she murdered them all. Only one person survived and lived to tell the tale. She was never arrested, however, since her farm caught fire and she reportedly died in it. Many of her victims' bodies were discovered among the ruins. Ed Gein. Ed Gein is said to have inspired the films Psycho, Silence of the Lambs, and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He grew up in Wisconsin, enduring a lowly existence. His father was an aggressive drunk, and his mother was strict, developing in Gein a phobia of women and sex. His entire family died within 5 years, leaving him all alone on his family property, where he chose to build a shrine to his mother. After 13 years of living alone there, the cops arrived one day after receiving information about a missing woman. They discovered not just the woman's body, but also a number of additional horrors. Ed Gein utilized mangled remains of persons who had been slain to create furniture and clothing. The majority of the items were created from bodies he dug up from graveyards, although some he killed personally. He felt he was resurrecting his mother with these body parts, and it was revealed that he had schizophrenia. He spent his final years in a mental hospital due to his sickness. David Berkowitz. David Berkowitz was the serial killer infamous for spreading terror throughout New York City in the 1970s. He referred to himself as the Son of Sam in letters to the police. David is suspected of murdering 6 individuals. Nevertheless, the facts surrounding his murders are very controversial. Several records and studies indicate that he may have been a member of a cult at one time in his life. He also killed individuals while shouting the devil's name, Satan. David may be in the business of producing snuff films, which are videos made through genuine physical violence and killing. Berkowitz said after his arrest that he was instructed to do the mass murder by the devil and a Labrador retriever kept by a neighbor named Sam. The Zodiac Killer. The most famous serial killer in American history. The case of the Zodiac Killer is one of the most well-known unsolved murders. 5 people were murdered in the San Francisco Bay Area in the late 1960s, between 1968 and 1969. This mysterious serial murderer primarily targeted young couples and lone male cab drivers. The Zodiac murderer took the deaths of 5 people during his active time. 2 of his attempted victims escaped his attack. The murderer was well known for a string of scathing letters and cards delivered to local media. His writings contained ciphers and cryptograms in which he said cryptically that he was gathering enslaved people for life, beyond death. To this day, only 2 of the Zodiac Killer's 4 ciphers have been resolved. 2, like the arrogant killer's identity, remain unsolved. That's all for now. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let us know your thoughts in the comments section. See you in the next video. Please subscribe to our channel and click the bell button to receive new updates. Stay tuned!